Hello and welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast. I'm Shane O'Connor and he's Adrian Lacey. If you've never caught up with the podcast before, basically we choose for each other an episode of a comedy program that we found out. Sometimes it's one that we're aware of and we've seen before, and other times, like this one, Adrian, we have a leap of faith off a cliff.
Into the unknown.
Into the abyss.
Did you say Thelma and Louise? Yeah, well, it didn't end well for them, did it?
We did, actually, yeah. I mentioned that last week, but we never actually clarified which one was Thelma and which one was Louise, did we? Out the two of
Does
us.
it matter? Because it doesn't end too good for either of them.
Can I be the one with the headscarf, or did they both have headscarves? I can't remember.
Well, we both need headscarves to cover, what God's forgotten, as Marty Ken used to say.
my little head gets cold. That's what it is.
And my little head too.
Anyway, we'll play some of the some clips. We've got 3 clips to play of the chosen comedy program, and at the end of the podcast, we'll give it a mark out of 5 each, giving it an aggregate score of whatever out of 10. And it was my turn to choose last week. And I chose something that I'd never watched.
This'll learn, yeah.
I don't know what I saw. I saw trails and stuff, I think. Apologies, by the way, if sometimes you have somebody singing in the background of your rent. Well, I've got a child screaming in the background. I mean, not screaming in a bad way, just screaming in a, oh, look what I can do with my voice kind of way. So you might hear a little extraneous scream. We'd promise we're not torturing him in the background or anything like that. It's just that they get to this age where they think, oh, I can have a good old scream now.
Sorry, we're talking about my landlord singing upstairs. No, your son. Right,
my son screaming. So between the two of them, we should have a right old scream and shout. Sorry, what were we saying?
Something to do with the show. Oh, yes, Leap of Faith. Are you going to say the title of the show and then I say, I give you a headline?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, it's Channel 4 series called Lee and Dean, not to be confused with the advertising agency. Do you want me to give you a quick synopsis? I mean, it's basically, they're a pair of builders, aren't they? And
yes,
their personal life is inextricably linked with their professional life.
Yes, brothers with different mothers, as the blurb has it.
Is that what it says?
Yes. And I had to think for a moment, are they half brothers? But given that they've got different fathers as well.
Be, yeah.
No, they're not. So my headline. Go on. Give us. Finish your synopsis. I wasn't sure how long.
I mean, there isn't much more to it than that, is there? Really? I mean, they're a pair of builders. It's about their life, isn't it, and their work and what they do. And I mean, there isn't
lives or lack of. Yeah.
There isn't kind of a huge depth to it, is there, in that sense? So, give us a headline then for what you thought, because this is like first reactions. Neither of us had seen it before. What do you think?
Yes. Now, forgive me. I'm going to bend the rules slightly, but that's to help any new listeners along. The first one will be a mystery to those of you not familiar with the show I'm referencing, and then I'll come up with a second headline, which will translate the first. So the first one, Shane at least will understand. It's All Bar Luke, Volume 2.
Oh.
All Bar Luke, Volume 2. And what I mean by that is, you can always check our... that was the laser scoreboard I was holding up, borrowed from, I'm sorry, I haven't a clue, long-running radio show. But anyway, All Bar Luke is another radio show, not quite so long-running, but we've slabbed it previously. So if you search for All Bar Luke, wherever you are, and getting your podcast, getting this currently. To translate, comedy of cruelty, not for me.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what do you mean All Bar Luke Volume 2? It was episode 17 of our podcast, by the way, if you want to hear what we thought about All Bar Luke. And
it's Spreadsheet Shane. It's almost impossible to say.
It's not actually a spreadsheet. It's on my little thing here. Don't take them in, but we gave it 6.5. That's all I'm telling you.
Okay.
I told you I got myself sorted, didn't I, and organised. I must send it over to you.
Yeah, it's impressive. Sorry, can I just ask, while on that, because we give it... individually stars out of 5 each, and then you top them up some weeks more successfully than others. But have you got the breakdown on your spreadsheet of who gave what?
You're asking a bit much, aren't you? Now, I mean, the more. And can you tell us the blood type of the person who?
Rhesus negative.
What? I mean, what's the matter with you? No, it was 6.5.
So we'll never know. We'll never know. You see, one of us might really like it, and the other one really hates it.
I when I put this all together, I was thinking of that song. What we need is a great big melting pot.
Big enough.
To hold the world and what it's got.
I think we'll stop before it gets a little bit dubious.
Including the scores to the Comedy Slab podcast. So no, I haven't got the individual scores. Right. It's not about blame.
Well, it isn't unless it turns out to be your fault.
It's like, oh, you only gave me that. What's the matter with you? So... I think the reason we only got 6.5 on Luke is because you hated it, didn't you, really?
I don't like to use the term hate. Again, it wasn't for me. All Bar Luke is, again, it's a comedy of cruelty. That's the common theme between Lee and Dean, which we're currently slabbing, and hapless Luke. I mean, separately, artistically, it was brilliant. It was a one-man show that didn't sound like a one-man show because he filled in all the gaps, or he gave you enough in your head. No, I wouldn't ever turn anyone away from it. I think it's a bravura performance. It made me so sad. Maybe I was at a particularly vulnerable moment. This one, again, maybe I'm having a not such a good day, but I can't cope with those long pauses, which are just painful to the nth degree, and the awkwardness, and you feel yourself shifting from one foot to another.
It's weird because you're not the only one to feel. I mean, I read some reviews. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I didn't feel that like you did. But it still wasn't for me. But for somewhat different reasons, which is quite interesting that you felt that. But should we have a listen first off? Should we just whack one of the clips in and have a listen, and then it'll sort of set the scene for people. I tell you what, the thing that I did really like about it, and I like it when people do things differently and try different treatments of stuff. And it's interesting when maybe we'll find time to talk about the mockumentary genre and whether that is something that has perhaps been done enough now. But no title music on this, which I kind of, it was like straight in, wasn't it? You were straight from the get-go. You were trying to fathom out exactly what was happening.
Yeah,
which I kind of quite liked, actually.
And clip number 1 is very close to the top, is it not?
It is pretty well. I think it is the top, actually, isn't it? I think it's the start. I mean, I'm loath to explain this clip. I'd rather just play it to people because
we didn't. Yeah, that's how we saw it, isn't it?
That's how we came to it, isn't it? So should we just play it and just see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you poem?
It's sort of work in progress, but we've soured your tea with the devil's milk. We're looking for leniency, Mr. Cabot Silk. We didn't mean to hurt you. We're certainly not ignoring your anger at the state that we've left your parquet flooring.
That's beautiful, mate. Really nice.
I'm Lee.
I'm Dean.
We run
Dean Lee Construction Solutions.
Yeah.
I'm a chippy by trade.
And I'm a spark, but we'll have a go at most
things.
Yeah. So it's 500. Yeah, we've got a big reputation in the area, haven't we?
Yeah,
I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
Right, if you took a crowbar at that'll come off, and that's a concern for us. We want to take Dean Lee into the 20th century, get amongst all them designer ponces, play them at their own game, do you know what I mean? Because we can undercut them, can't we?
Oh, yeah.
As ever, I enjoy clips more in your presence. I didn't laugh when I was watching earlier the line about souring the tea with the devil's milk. But when I heard you giggle, it's kind of rammed the gag home to me. And you see, that's what we've lost, where we don't have audience laughter on shows like this, minimalist comedy shows. Very much in the Office style, mockumentary you've already touched on. So what we should explain, being an audio podcast, you couldn't see that we see some stain on the posh client's face which is only revealed at the last minute after the reference in the poem to parquet flooring. Were you moved by the poem?
Just, do you know, I was quite heartened at the start. I thought, oh, it's good. This is going to be. It's quite a clever bit of writing. I mean, the fact that two builders would apologise in poetic verse
Through the medium of
poetry,
yeah.
and then who as a writer would give a character the name Mr. Cabot Silk? I mean, do you know what I mean? It's like if you were gonna say, okay, we've soured your tea with the devil's milk. You think what surname should I give the Mr. Dilk or Mr. Ilk? Or you wouldn't make it double barreled, would you? Wouldn't. They must know somebody called Cabot Silk. Is all I'm saying, because
I'm wondering if they weren't thinking of Robert Kilroy Silk. Do you think?
Well, even that. I mean, but you kind of
Robert
think like,
Cabot. It's
Mr.
got to have a system.
Mr. Cabot Silk. I just thought that, and I went into that and I thought, oh, I'm going to like this.
Yeah.
But I like how wrong I could be. But that, to me, that was the cleverest part of the writing.
Also, the poem doesn't quite scan, but again, I think that's entirely intentional because he's obviously meant to be a not very good poet.
He's a builder, for God's sake. I mean,
Exactly.
What do you expect?
He's not a very good builder, as it turns out.
No,
it would seem. But yeah, so I mean, I know I'm not meant to ask you since you set the homework, but on this occasion, because you set it blind, as it were, what would have been your headline then? If I'd set it for you.
I'm not even giving it a thought. I would probably say Lee and Dean just aren't working.
Right.
I couldn't put my finger on what I had a problem with. I don't know. I like both of them, Miles Chapman and Mark O'Sullivan, who play Lee and Dean. Mark O'Sullivan, who plays Dean, who is not the bald guy for ease of recognition. Reminded me of, you remember Shane Langan, who played Graham in The Walshes? Hello, Mrs. Walsh.
Oh, yes.
His facial expressions, he kind of looked, he like kind of got this hangdog sort of taking it all in and being a bit miserable about it. The way that Mark O'Sullivan played that character reminded, and a bit of Tim Key as well. It's interesting you should say all bar Luke, because I thought there was a bit of Tim Key in his acting as well. But
right.
These, from what I can gather, I mean, you probably had you look at them as well. This is the first thing these guys have done, isn't it? Of note.
Well, this is the thing. I thought I recognised our main man, Miles Chapman.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to stop myself calling him Mark Chapman, which is...
Yeah,
I don't know where...
The difference if you're a Beatles fan, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to endear him to anyone, is it?
No, he'd only been with Morgana Robinson, hadn't he, in the thing she did called the Agency, was all I could find.
I can see here David Brent, Life on the Road.
Oh, he had a small part in that, didn't he, I think? Yeah.
Yeah. He just seems familiar, unless I'm confusing my balders. But that's just like, people confusing us. Brothers from a different mother.
Yeah. And Mark O'Sullivan, interestingly enough, he'd been in I think it was a BBC Two sketch show with, or for a guy called Javain Prince.
I saw one or two of those.
And he actually worked in that. Colin Holt was in that as well, from the Carnival of Monsters. So,
wow.
But it's interesting as well, the whole cast, I looked at this, and the whole cast, apart from Perry Benson, who plays Dean's dad, I didn't recognise anybody. They all appear to be relatively newcomers, although they'd had sort of small parts in other stuff as well. So it's quite interesting. We were talking, was it last week or the week before, we were talking about the circles that, the little groups that form, and they kind of work together. These appear to be a new bunch in a way.
Yeah, and we should say this is a Bingo Television. Have I got the name right? It is Bingo, certainly. It's
Bingo Productions, yeah. Bingo Productions.
Their website is bingofilms.co.uk. But yeah, they have made a film. They're obviously ambitious to do film as well as TV.
Well, from what I can gather, because I looked them up on Company's House, because I'm a bit of a yeah. That's actually, it's a company owned by Miles and Miles Chapman, Mark O'Sullivan, Sam Underwood, who plays Little Dean, and a guy called Martin Jolly, who was the line producer for this.
Right.
So that's their company, as it were. So they've kind of self-produced with this, haven't they? And if you look at the credits, I mean, they've poured their heart and soul into this, haven't they, these guys?
And probably quite a bit of their personal finance, for all we know. I'm only guessing. But that is a recurring theme, isn't it? Although it's rare for us to be slabbing something with people just starting out like them or relatively unknown in the industry. They might not be starting out at all. It might have been, I don't know, they might have been, for all we know, doing off West End theatre productions or something like that we haven't come across. I don't know.
That is the trouble, isn't it, with the internet, is that if, like with the Internet Movie Database or something like that, if you do theatre, you might as well be dead, because...
It's a shame. What we need is, I'm sure someone's shouting at their podcast player that there is a theatre equivalent. I haven't yet quite found it, although, of course, you can piece things together on the web, but you can't always reverse engineer stuff if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know what productions.
No. I found myself getting really frustrated with this because there was some, I thought, laugh out loud moments. I don't know, and I think they missed a trick. Maybe as the series goes on, you'll see more of the building site. I think the building site is a rich vein of comedy. You know, when they're all sitting around doing the crossword. And he said,
that was a good gag.
It's 3 and 3, a Cambodian despot. And
With an O.
He says, first one's got O in the middle. He went, Gok Wan. And they all went, yeah.
Well, that's not exactly flattering to construction workers. I wondered whether, is this not a bit of a stereotype, a bit of a cheap stereotype?
I don't know. I mean, stereotypes are there for a reason, aren't they? It's because people have noticed that is what a lot of people of that particular stereotype are like. Now, I've got to say that, we've had, with our last house, we had quite an experience of builders, because we had some building work done that lasted about a year. And I got to know the builders, and believe me, they're not stretching the bounds of credibility. In fact, I think they're underplaying it when I saw,
Perhaps you've been unlucky.
No, they were great guys. I mean, but when the guy turned up the one day, one of the builders turned up with the Breville sandwich toaster and plugged it in outside and started cooking burgers on his sandwich toaster.
That's classy.
This is what I say. It's a rich vein. I don't think, it's. They're very resilient people.
They can probably take it, yeah. You don't survive for 5 minutes on a building site if you haven't got a sense of humour.
No.
And if you take yourself too seriously, God help you.
And like the nicknames as well, all the builders of... all the nicknames of the builders that were there. And I kind of thought, no, they underplayed that again. It could have been, that was an area that could have been exploited and could have provided for more. I've found myself being more frustrated.
Right. You wanted to be the script editor and steer them in a different direction.
Yeah.
As you say, it might be sorted in future episodes. But.
I mean, but then again, the fact that Lee and Dean, their hobbies are brass and bark rubbing.
Yeah, I thought, that was trying to swim up against the tide of expectations for construction workers. I don't move in those circles, not because I look down on them. I actually look up to them because I'm, someone with fewer DIY skills has never walked the earth other than me.
Right.
So, there's a rich vein of comedy there, but it's too painful for me to laugh at. Anyway, should we?
Yeah, sorry. Go on, sorry. I was just going to say that. Did you find the characters were a bit overplayed? Only slightly, but slightly overplayed, and it was a bit obvious at times. Whether the lady that they're doing work for, and she quite obviously fancies Lee, but she can never remember Dean's name, and it was
slightly overdone.
It's all a bit obvious, isn't it? It's like kind of the path of least resistance. I kind of think if they'd have dug a bit deeper, it was there, it was going in the right direction, but needed a bit more digging in the script. Did you feel that as well? I don't know.
Yeah, I did. I mean, first time it was okay. She's forgotten Dean, and then it's obvious she fancies Lee. Dean is, shall we say, of lower IQ, for want of a better term. Not a great academic, but has a very warm heart, it would seem.
Yeah.
Which seems permanently to be broken, actually, and trodden on. Help me out here, Mrs. Bryce. We don't get to know her first name, do we? Posh lady.
Yeah, no, they mentioned it at the party, and I can't remember what it is now.
All right, because in the listing here, she's just...
Bryce-D'Souza, her name is, isn't
That's
it?
it.
Mrs. Bryce-D'Souza, yeah.
So another double-barreled name. So there's obviously some class undertow going on here, but that's not unusual in the world of British comedy. Anyway, so we've seen her earlier in the show, before this sequence we're about to hear. We've seen her very obviously. There's loads of suggestive double entendres.
Which Dean tries to revisit, doesn't he? Not very successfully.
Which is painful, yeah. So that's probably all you need to know. So first time through, we've seen Ms. Bryce-D'Souza with Lee. This time through, Dean's trying to recreate that moment, but it ain't going to happen, frankly.
Do you want to leave it open for Lee?
No, he ain't coming.
All right. Is he doing another job? Or?
No, he's just out with Nick, I think. Yeah, something still to tap, is it?
Yeah, just have a little look at the lad's day out then. Sort of.
Nikki.
Nikki.
Yeah.
Remind me, it's his sister?
Girlfriend.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one.
So he's still giving you bother and that?
It's probably just a quick fix, sort of. And if you don't have time to do it today, Lee could pop round another time and do it.
Yeah, no, he won't. He's sorting out stuff for his party and that, so...
Which?
His birthday party.
Oh, his birthday.
Yeah, which I normally do. She's doing all of it, of course.
Poor you. Never mind. At least he's happy, that's good. So...
Yeah, he is happy.
It's just a little bit loose there, so...
How's your crack?
It's fine.
Need filling?
No.
I mean, how old am I? I'm just laughing at that.
Kindly leave the stage.
Oh dear, and I felt ashamed of myself to be laughing.
I think that's what that line's there for, but of course he's referring to we assume a crack in the plaster.
Well, this is the code that Lee was using, wasn't he, when he wanted to take her upstairs and that, and he was like, I thought the acting was quite good from the guy that plays Dean there, because he was you could see he was like Mark O'Sullivan. He was trying to emulate what he'd seen, wasn't he? He was trying to see, well, how does this work, kind of thing. And you could see the thought process on his face, which I thought was great. But again, it's just, I think it's let down by the words. They're just the path of least resistance. I felt it could have been much funnier, I think, rather than just going for the easy. It was almost schoolboy humour, wasn't it, that, I guess, really, which probably why I laughed.
Says the man who just laughed like a schoolboy.
I know.
But if we set that to one side, I mean, okay, if you were script editor, would you have chopped this scene altogether, or would you have pushed it and said, no, there's the potential here for some real depth and some real belly laughs?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the way that he's trying to figure out how it works.
Because it reminds me, did you ever hear, sorry to interrupt,
go on.
Having asked the question, there was a Chinese postman, this is a true story, Chinese postman got sent to jail, a bit sad, because he was opening people's letters, trying to find out how romance worked. It's a terribly sad story, really. He was steaming open the letters that, I don't know how he knew, he probably got through, well, you could see if something was a household bill, he probably didn't bother steaming those open. But for his pains and for his slight ignorance in the ways of love, he got put in the slammer.
He got sent to prison, so he got another lesson on love, but a different kind.
Yes.
The interesting thing is that we haven't mentioned is that this undercurrent that Dean is in love with Lee, and I'm not. I don't know. Does that work for you? I don't know whether...
Yeah, I didn't feel it as a homoerotic thing. I thought, well, it's described as, brothers with different mothers. So I didn't quite buy it at times, but then they had this history we heard, didn't we, in other places other than the clips we've heard, that they would have been quite close at school.
Yeah.
Or thrown together at school. I mean, it was described as almost a punishment to have to look after Dean, wasn't it? At one point at school.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's all a bit awkward. But then that is the nature of the comedy. It is the comedy of awkwardness. I didn't feel there was any desire between them, but I thought at stages I didn't quite believe that Lee, who's a ladies' man, would give quite so much time to Dean. But again, maybe this gets developed. I imagine it would get developed over the rest of the series.
Didn't get that then, that Dean was in love with Lee, that it was like an unrequited thing that. In fact, at the party, didn't somebody say that they thought, everybody thought he was gay or whatever, and I read it in a review as well, which kind of made me think, I didn't imagine it then.
Well, I think there's a fine line between looking up to someone, or certainly as a. Do you remember that as a boy? I definitely had male role models. And they didn't have to be that much older than me. I mean, when you're 10, someone in just a year or two above you might be someone you look up to and think, consciously or otherwise, you might be thinking, oh, that's something I want to do. I want to be a bit like them,
right,
in this field.
You think it's that kind of thing rather than...
Well, maybe I'm being a bit over-innocent. I didn't feel it as an erotic type thing.
Right. Okay, maybe
I'd be wrong.
Maybe it's me then. Perhaps I don't know.
No. Don't blame yourself.
It lends a lot from The Office, doesn't it? Don't you think? There were a couple of times when, like the shock answer technique that Ricky Gervais used to use, where I think where Lee's girlfriend's saying, "Can you tell me something about him?" to Dean, that got anything I can use. And he said, "Well, is that did he killed the dog?"
That was a surprise, yes.
She went, "Oh no, did he run it over his car? And now he threw it up a wall or something." Oh my god!
And then he said it didnn't hurt or something like that.
He didn't feel anything or something. Yeah, it
which
like,
all happened too quickly, I think.
Yeah, it was like
that was. But that again's cruelty, isn't it?
Yeah. And there was a scene but it wasn't done with the sophistication that the Office was done with. I felt that there was the scene at the party where they left the woman outside of the mobility scooter for a while was very reminiscent of do you remember in The Office when they had the fire alarm and there was the girl in the wheelchair?
Oh yes, and the person in the wheelchair. But then, it's not always easy. I find, even as an analytical person, when it comes to comedy, which is what we put things on the slab to dissect them and analyse them. But there's something, I haven't seen The Office for ages, but there's certainly more depth going on and more sophistication and an undercurrent and maybe stronger performances as well.
Yeah, stronger characterisation maybe. Or because again, we're saying, we think the characters, I said maybe been a bit overplayed, but then you could level that at The Office, couldn't you, really, and say, well, they were quite strongly played, weren't they? Like Gareth Keenan, for example, the Mackenzie Crook character. I mean, like,
with his holster for his mobile phone.
Yeah,
and I mean, again, but there was a backstory with him, and a bit. Again, it might be unfair just to judge this on the first episode alone, but with Gareth, we knew he was in the TAs, the Territorial Army, and
I suppose the difference with that is that, like you say, if you've not got much experience of builders, it's more difficult to judge. Whereas at some point, a lot of people have worked in an office and have probably known people like Brent and Gareth and.
That's a good point. Yeah, there are office types, aren't there?
Yeah, maybe that's.
Although we have welcomed construction people into our homes at various stages, I think everyone's been there at some time. They got the banter thing right, I think.
I wanted to see more of that. I'll be honest with you. I thought that was what we were going to see, and I wanted to see more of that. And
right.
Maybe you will. To me, there was a bit too much on. They kind of threw the fact that they were builders away almost, and the characters weren't strong enough to do that. So you wanted to see more of them at work, and more of how they operated, and more of the humour coming. I wanted to anyway, see more of the humour coming out of that. Maybe I don't know.
I didn't feel much counterbalancing warm hearts, which human beings are human beings wherever they are, and you will find bad people in working class circles and good people, and ditto, whichever circles you move in. But there can be enormously huge hearts in working class culture, and people who virtually die for each other or take a bullet for each other, to poetically or literally even. And I didn't quite get that bond. Again, that might develop between the guys. Shall we hear our third and final audio clip?
Yeah, because this is at the party, isn't it? They've had a party for Lee's birthday. Did you want to introduce it? Sorry, I jumped in there.
No, I was hoping you would, actually, because I got a little thrown here. It doesn't take much, as you know, but about the engagement, although I went with it, as did they. But would you like to set the scene how we get there?
Yeah, I mean, this basically, they were having a conversation at the bar. This is Lee and his girlfriend having a conversation at the bar, and he said he wanted to lend her some money to set up in business. I thought she had a great line a bit earlier on as well, Lee's girlfriend, where she was saying about how her idol is Esther Ranson. Because to set up a business like the NSPCC, she must have a fantastic brain. I just thought
A, it's not a business, and B, she didn't set it up. But apart from that, she got the facts.
No, she got it completely right, didn't she? Apart from all of that, but so they'd had this conversation, and she was going to set up a business, and he said he wanted to lend her the money. And Dean's dad overhears this at the bar, and he's saying. Lee's saying to his girlfriend, "Oh, do you accept? Do you accept?" Meaning, do you accept that I give you the money? And she says, "Oh, yes." Dean's dad overhears it. Perry Benson, I have to say, by the way, I mentioned him earlier on. I don't know if you remember. You ever watched the film Scum?
No, I didn't see it, but I know of it.
Ray Winston. Yeah. Oh, it's a classic, fantastic, set in a Borstal. But Perry Benson is one of the.
Oh, hang on! I did that. That is on a building site, isn't it?
No, it's in a Borstal. They're in Borstal, aren't they?
Sorry, you just said that.
Yeah.
But I'm confusing it with another similar gritty movie. Carry on.
But you was confusing it with Building Scum. But I love Perry Benson because he plays these kind of myopic characters all the while, because I think in real life he wears these huge glasses, and I always see he always looks upward through
Bottle
these glasses.
lenses.
Yeah, I just think he's fabulous. He's really good. Anyway, he's Dean's dad. He overhears this. He's doing the disco as well, isn't he? And I think that's pretty well. That's pretty well where we pick up the scene.
A little birdie told me that Lee and Nikki are engaged. Isn't that right, Lee? Hey, Nikki.
What's going on? Did you plan this?
No, that must be a mistake. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're engaged. We're engaged.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I adore you, darling.
Are we engaged?
I think we are.
I went across the road to the premiering and booked them a room for tonight with a free buffet breakfast for tomorrow. This is Dean's favourite song, actually. So Dean and his bird, please come up there. Come on. It's Angels Instead by Robin Williams.
Angels Instead by Robin Williams, that well-known pop singer.
And there's me going, "Oh, it's too simplistic," and I'm laughing at lines like that.
Yeah, exactly. That is a lovely line. And it's the idea that the song would be called, because he's got the line, "I'm loving angels instead."
Yeah.
It must be called Angels Instead. And maybe that age group is it's a fine line between Robbie and Robin Williams.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are some lines there. Maybe it's a not high enough gag rate. And I speak as someone who's been critiqued. I speak as I find, and I know those who live by the sword die by the critical sword. Some of my attempts at comedy have been accused of having too low a gag rate. So it's I have to take that on the chin.
I mean, but having said that, I mean, somebody was quoting. Did you watched episodes, didn't you, with Steve Mangan and?
Yeah, I got a little bit mildly addicted to it at one stage. I just found it, a pleasant way to spend half an hour or so.
Somebody said quoted him apparently because they write comedy, don't they? Or they're writers. They're a pair of writers. And
Him and Tamsin,
yeah,
Steve Mangan character.
And they were saying that in the series he says, "Oh well, comedy doesn't have to be funny." And this is a conversation that we've had so many times, isn't it, on the Comedy Slab about whether it has to be funny or whether what the gag rate is. I think if you don't have I wouldn't knock somebody back for not having a high gag rate.
Thank you.
But equally, character development has to take over then, doesn't it? Something has to fill that void if you don't. I mean, I thought there were some great gags. I thought there were some great lines in there. I mean, even at the end of the party, I think young Lee, or Little Lee, or whatever he's called, one of the other builders, he says, I'm going to go and show Mrs. Bryce-D'Souza the back of Tesco's. Which was
a euphemism?
Yeah, euphemism for he's going to go and have sex with her at the back of the supermarket kind of thing, and it's like you kind of think there was some kind of thing, and I thought, nice writing, but
you liked that line,
but yeah, I mean, I just thought it gives an insight into the character, doesn't it? And I just thought that you either have to have gags or you have to have character development. You got to do.
Nice to have both, which I think The Office did. Maybe that's another difference. Managed to keep the two in tandem.
Yeah.
You've got to care about characters. You've got to, at some stage, either be rooting for them, or if they're bad, they've got to be so bad that they're intriguingly bad. Bad people. It unfortunately wouldn't make me want to watch episode 2, which is a shame.
But I have to say, and a lot of people, because I think the critics quite liked it, but from what I can gather, the audience weren't as keen. But a lot of people did say that there was a lot of plot and character set up in the first episode, so you really need to watch episode 2 to get a feel for what it's really like. So, maybe we haven't done ourselves any favour watching the first one. But when you dive into something like that, a lot of it doesn't make sense for us to critique it, then, does it? That's the problem.
Yeah, or indeed for our long-suffering listening audience. I think we always have a heavy heart if we don't really like something, because I think I speak for you. We want to like it, don't we? It's like someone told me about job interviews from the other perspective, but from the perspective of being the person doing the interviewing, which I have to confess I've never been that side of the table. And they've told me we really want the person to succeed, the candidates plural, which will make their job harder choosing between them. But they don't go out to trip people up generally, and they don't want them to fail. They don't take any delight in it. But there was a certain, Schadenfreude delight in, it comes back to the comedy of cruelty. So maybe I can afford to be slightly more robust in my critiquing.
The interesting thing, it's just been greenlit for a second series.
Has it?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I noticed that Ricky Grover is on board. You know Ricky Grover, who...
yeah. I thought... I saw his name just fleetingly when I was quickly looking at it on the net after you'd said it last week, and I was pretty sure he would be a central star or joint star in it.
Yeah.
Obviously not.
I don't know what role he plays in the second series, but I think he's going to be in it definitely. So that might, because that was one of the other things, is that largely the cast were people that you wouldn't have known, and that's quite brave, isn't it? I've got to say though, when you look at the people responsible for this, and I just did a little bit of research on the commissioning editors for this, to see who commissioned it. And one of the people involved is a woman called Fiona McDermott, who is obviously a commissioning editor for Channel 4, but has been involved, if I tell you, she's been involved in commissioning Staff.
Let's Flats, which we liked.
Catastrophe, have you seen that?
I've seen one or two, yes. That's been critically acclaimed.
Yeah, Damned is another one which didn't get a third series, I think. Derry Girls, Man Down, Campus, Cardinal Burns, to name but a few. So she obviously, she the woman who commissioned this, or one of the people who commissioned this, I mean, she's no fool when it comes to knowing what's how many beans make five when it comes to comedy. Do you know what I mean? And her counterpart, Rachel Springer, has been responsible either as a commissioning editor or as a producer for Toast of London, Peep Show, Friday Night Dinners, Shooting Stars. I think she worked on as a producer. So again, these are people who you kind of you think I'm going to trust their judgment really when you look at their track record.
That makes me think maybe I should try another episode or two. Because they're seeing something I'm not seeing at the moment.
Something soured your tea with the devil's milk, hasn't it? That's
It's most certainly. I think it is off. Hang on, I've just. Yeah, I won't finish it now.
I don't even want to think too hard about what that is.
No, don't. No, given some of the imagery that goes on in that show. Right, it must be time.
It is.
To give it a star rating out of 5 each and then try and do the math. Can I let you go first?
Yeah. I'm going to give it, and I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to give it 2.5. I'm going to split it down the middle. And the reason I'm going to give it 2.5 is I'm tempted to give it 2, but I want to give it 2.5 because I think first episode syndrome has a lot to play in this. And I, like you, I'm looking at that. I'm thinking I'm going to try another couple of episodes. So I think. I won't be as cruel as to give it 2, but I'll give it 2.5.
That is exactly what I decided at the beginning of the show, or perhaps just before we hit record. I'll go for 2.5 as well. So collectively, we'll give it 5.
Give it 5?
5 out of 10. So we're never quite sure where the pass mark is. 2 would be sort of damning it, wouldn't it? 2.5 says there's some hope there.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think I wouldn't write it off by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't say, it wasn't the worst 25 minutes of my life or whatever, however long it was. But equally, I think I like I say, I got frustrated because I wanted to see a different direction. Maybe that's my fault that it wasn't the show that I expected it was going to be, and that disappointed. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, what have you got for homework, young man?
Well, this is something I've kind of fallen in love with, but as I say that, I immediately want to qualify it by saying, don't expect to be clutching your sides. I don't think you will, unless you have indigestion, because there's just something very likeable and natural about it.
Do you remember Sarah Kendall, though? Do you remember? Sarah Kendall, we've said... It wasn't gag a minute, but what a storyteller.
Well, gripping. This is, I think this is just addictive in a different way in that it's just so natural and believable. So that has to be a credit to actors, writers. Well, in fact, the lead actor is also the writer or co-writer. I don't know much about it. I'm going to have to do some homework for next week. But you may say, as indeed... my landlord, who I was watching it with, soon to be ex-landlord, but I'm moving on, not because he's going to... Anyway, it doesn't matter. He said he thought she'd been in things, going back to the 80s. It's Pamela Adlon, I beg your pardon. See, I'm even struggling with the name. And a series, it's a buy-in for the BBC, it's an American production, called Better Things.
Is she short with dark hair?
She is.
She played Louis' girlfriend in Louis. Louis
C.K. By any chance Louis C.K.? Well, I'm going to say it's no coincidence, and I'm surprised the Beeb, given that there've been some allegations, shall we say, swirling around Mr. C.K. I was slightly surprised the Beeb didn't find this too hot to the touch, but yes, he's involved with her. I think co-writing credit or co-executive producer credit. I'll have to swat up a bit more. But essentially, she's an actress playing an actress. That shouldn't necessarily work, but I think it does here. But you're not seeing her much at work. It's that her real work is in the home because she's got 3 daughters, 2 of whom are getting particularly to that awkward age. Terrible teens, and it's her day-to-day battles, really. And it is, in a sense, that ordinary, but it's I hope you like it. I hope you warm to it, but there's no guarantee you will.
It sounds a bit like Louis, but she's playing the main character, doesn't it? It's because like that was his life with his daughter, and he was a comedian,
right?
And
so it's an answering show to that.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? What's it called? Did you say?
Better Things, and rightly or wrongly, I am going to suggest. I think. Well, the BBC's only got series 1 up, but happily it's up for about or at least a year, it says on iPlayer, within the UK at least. I'm going for episode 1, which is the pilot.
Okay.
But I think, well, if you're going to get into it, it will get you into the series. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we'll see how we go.
All right, that's for next week. If we whetted your appetite, by the way, for Lee and Dean, and you want to catch a bit of them, I put a couple of links on our description. Where you can actually sit and watch it. You can watch all the episodes in one if you want to gorge yourself on the All 4 website. And I've also put a link as well where you can buy it on DVD, which I'm going to start to do as well. If people want to buy them outright, if I can find a place where you can buy them. A DVD, how quaint! Remember those?
Oh, get you, Grandad. Yes.
No, it's a digital versatile disc. So the links are there if you want to go and have a look and see what's what in terms of Lee and Dean. That's it for a Comedy Slab podcast for this time round. We'll be back next time, as Adrian said, with better things. We'll be reviewing that one. In the meantime, if you want to catch up with us, then you can on the audio version. Is mainly on Spreaker, but then it obviously disseminates down to Apple Podcasts and all the other lovely places where you can get your podcasts. For just search Comedy Slab, you should find us. There aren't many slabs out there, and there's also
comedy
a kind
nature. Yes,
there's also a sort of a semi-visual version on YouTube as well, and of course we've got our social media stuff as well, haven't we?
Which is, quite simply, at Comedy Slab on Twitter and Facebook. So we'd love you to follow us on Twitter, because you get the occasional, little nugget of comedy information you might not have come across. Between us, me and Shane try and keep across the things we think you might be interested in. So it's not just plugging our show. There is a world beyond that. Even we have to admit it. And we're also on Facebook, at Comedy Slab again. And if you could like that, that would be great.
And every so often we get a little note from some of the stars of the shows that we're reviewing.
Oh yeah, I've got a bit of news from last time.
Yeah, to say that they
the other week,
which it made my. I wasn't going to lie, it made my week. It was the one two before this, wasn't it? Semi-detached that we reviewed, and we had a little note from one of the writers, Oliver Maltman, who said that he thought the Comedy Slab was a fair summation, didn't he, of the work, which was lovely, because we don't do this to upset people, do we? I mean, that's the last thing we want to do. So
no, but neither do we tiptoe. I mean, I thought we were quite robust with semi-detached. For instance, you said fast, which is what it is not necessarily your thing. So I thought it was very fair of him to say that.
Yeah.
And
he kind of got it, didn't he? He kind of got what we were trying to say, which was really nice as well.
No, so thank you very much, Oliver.
And he let the cat out of the bag as well to say that looks like that's going to get a series. So
we're reading between the lines.
Yeah.
But
so anyway,
we couldn't possibly comment. Yeah.
Until next time, I'm off to go and get a cup of tea, and I'm probably just going to have a couple of sugars and a little drop of the devil's milk in there.
And I'm going to have black tea.
I don't blame you.